Hello everyone, my name is Kenia. In recent years, the requirement of physical education classes, especially during high school and middle school, has reached rock bottom as students are now given the option to opt out of PE classes. According to the National Association for Sports and Physical Education, most states are cutting back on their physical education programs, except for the state of Illinois, which still requires students, regardless of grade level, to take a daily PE class. The Food Research and Action Center conducted tests that proved that obesity in young adults is largely increasing in America. Based on their research, in the years 2011 and 2012, their results showed that 31.8% of young adults are overweight, and 16.9% are considered obese. Obesity in children is a rapidly growing issue. However, it is an issue that can be addressed and resolved. Childhood obesity can be lowered by requiring grades K through 12 to participate in daily mandatory physical education classes. During recent years, several organizations, including the National Association for Sports and Physical Education, the American Alliance for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance, and the American Heart Association, have conducted research and done testing regarding the direct correlation between PE classes in school and childhood obesity. The NASPE also conducts a yearly report called The Shape of the Nation in order to analyze physical education programs throughout the U.S. By mandating all schools to make physical education a required class for all grade levels, obesity in young adults can be decreased as daily physical activity will reduce the risk for chronic diseases caused by overweight and obesity, as well as establish a healthy lifestyle that can be carried into their adulthood, reducing the chances of being obese at a later age. According to the NASPE, it is suggested for young adults to participate in regular physical activity for at least 1 hour daily. In their research, they found out that kids who were active daily were not placed in the obese overweight category and had stronger cardiovascular and respiratory system compared to kids who did not participate in physical activities daily. Also, as a result of physical activities, those kids correspondingly had less body fat and stronger bone and muscles. The Department of Health and Human Services pointed out that these factors not only create a healthy childhood, but also decrease the risk factors for chronic diseases such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, etc., which can develop early in life due to obesity and overweight, but can be significantly prevented through regular physical activity. PE classes are one of the ways in which kids and young adults can obtain the daily hour of physical activity that is suggested. Customs that one learns during childhood are largely carried out into their adulthood. Since in most states physical education is no longer required, students do not feel the need to stay physically active. According to the CDC, about 60% of students ages 9 to 13 do not engage in any physical activity, which highly increases their chances of becoming overweight and eventually obese. Since these students are not required to take a PE class during school, they become habituated into repeating the same cycle of being sedentary every day, which later turns into every year. As a result of this repeating cycle that starts at an early age, obesity in adults is largely increasing. Through careful research conducted by the Food Research and Action Center, studies show that more than 2/3 of adults in the United States are considered to be overweight or obese. After tests done by the FRAC in 2012 and 2011, 68.5% of all Americans are overweight, 34.9% are obese, and 6.4% have reached extreme obesity. According to the FRAC, the reasons why adults are obese are due to excessive calorie intake and inadequate amounts of physical activity. And one of the subclaims for the inadequate amounts of physical activity is limited time for daily physical education and recess during school. If students were required to take a daily PE class from primary school to high school, being active daily would become a custom in which they would continue to do every day and carry out into their adulthood, which would reduce the risk and percentage of obesity and even extreme obesity in adults. Rates in childhood and adult obesity have doubled in the last decade. with obesity in adults surpassing 50% and carrying over into extreme obesity. Due to increasing obesity, most kids are also developing several chronic diseases at early ages. They are also continuing customs of not being active since childhood, as they were not required to take physical education classes. However, chronic disease and obesity in childhood and adulthood can be reduced in the requirement of daily mandatory physical education classes. Thank you.
All right, I've got lots of good stuff in the speech and a couple of things that are real problems. Let's start with the good stuff. You've got a lot of good information in the speech. I thought at the beginning you set up the controversy pretty effectively. You cite your sources consistently throughout the presentation. They sound highly credible. There's good statistical information, pieces of testimony, a little bit of factual data here and there. So when it comes to the evidence part, you're doing great. I think you're fine there. Organizationally, this sounds to me like it's an essay that has not been put into the form for a speech. And as a consequence, it's interesting, and if people are paying close attention, they'll understand the point that you're trying to make, but how the arguments fit together is not very clear. And let's start with the proposition. You've got a proposition there. I was listening for it. I found it, but it's not very easy to find. I think you need to be a lot more explicit at the beginning of the speech what your claim is. Now, ultimately, I think everybody will figure it out, but it's almost a policy proposition, at that point, and you really do have a claim of fact that you're making here, then that is that requiring physical education would have a substantial effect on the health of our children or the health of the country in the future. That's basically the claim. Why you don't just go ahead and explicitly state that at the beginning of the speech is not clear to me, except that, like I said, I think you're writing it like it's an essay as opposed to a speech. You need to preview what the organizational structure is. All I got was information. I got a lot of information, which is great, but I don't know, that information doesn't always fit together. Sometimes it sounds repetitive. It seemed like you were going over the same point over and over and over again. We got a lot of kids who are overweight. There are a lot of health problems. There's some cycle that comes in. If they weren't in this cycle, they wouldn't be this way. They wouldn't be overweight. They'd be healthier. So it sounds like you're kind of going over the same point again and again and again. You need to kind of create a structure for that. And all of the information that you have here, I'm sure can be put together in a way that's going to be a lot clearer. At the end of the speech, like I've complimented a couple of people because they kind of summarize what their argument is, you summarize what the claim is. So your claim is a lot clearer at the exit, but what you don't summarize is what all of the information, how all the information goes together. We just have to know, we have to figure that out from all the data that you're presenting. So I think that's a little problematic. All right, thank you all very much for sticking around. We actually got through everybody tonight. We'll see if we can do the same thing. Was there a binder clip with this?
Yes.
We'll see if we can do the